Hi everyone. I never imagined, not even in my darkest nightmares, that I'd be here. Sitting in an ambulance, watching as paramedics tended to the man who was not my husband, the man whose body my husband had nearly shattered. Yet here I am. My name is Sarah, and for 5 years, I've been married to Adam, a man I once thought incapable of violence. Now, facing him feels impossible, let alone begging for forgiveness. Our marriage wasn't always this broken. In the beginning, it was built on a fierce love, unwavering trust, and a friendship that ran deeper than anything I'd ever known. Adam and I were inseparable, weathering every storm life threw our way. But over time, something corroded within us. We have 2 children, a boy and a girl, but they don't live with us anymore. Our home became a battleground, so toxic that our parents stepped in, taking the kids for their own good. Adam sees that even his own family believes he's unfit to be around them, and I know I'm too unstable to care for them right now. The first cracks appeared 2 years ago, after our second child was born. Arguments became a daily ritual, fueled by my festering insecurities about Adam's job. It sounds petty, I know, but I resented watching him leave each day, surrounded by intelligent, attractive women at his office. It made me feel small, just a housewife with no career, no degree, no purpose beyond raising our kids. I desperately wanted him to take a break, to stay home with me, even if just for a little while. Not to quit, just long enough to soothe the growing dread inside me. But Adam was unyielding. He had to work, he said, to provide. A leave wasn't an option. His father eventually intervened, forcing a fragile peace, but it was fleeting. A taste of forbidden fruit. Temptation found me and I failed. A year ago, I traveled to a wedding in a distant state. Adam was against me leaving our toddlers for a week. He argued I should at least take our 1-year-old. But I refused. After years dedicated to our family, I felt I deserved a break. If I'd managed alone for so long, surely he could handle a single week? He protested, reminding me his job made solo childcare impossible, but I didn't listen. I left without telling him, abandoning our children. That trip was the beginning of my downfall. 14 hours from home, surrounded by strangers, free from the suffocating weight of marriage and motherhood. What could go wrong? Everything. I never claimed to be a saint. And I accepted my own weakness the moment I saw the men there. There were plenty of bachelors, eager to mingle, indifferent to a wedding ring. I knew Adam was waiting for me, but the allure was overwhelming. 3 nights before the wedding at a cocktail party, I met Mark. He was my ultimate mistake. He offered to be my date for the evening. I should have said no. I even tried. But his persistence, his effortless confidence, his raw charm, it all pulled me in. Mark was temptation in its purest form. The way he looked at me, the subtle touches that lingered a second too long, the way he made me feel desired, something I hadn't felt in years. I should have walked away. Instead, I plunged headfirst into disaster. I can't blame Mark entirely, I was just as responsible. I didn't just let the affair happen, I encouraged it. I tested the boundaries, then deliberately erased them. I told him I was single. I slipped my wedding ring into my purse. I even changed my phone's wallpaper, removing the picture of Adam and our children. I wanted to erase my real life, if only for a while. Many would call my actions disgraceful, and they wouldn't be wrong. But not everyone can resist temptation when it's placed so seductively before them. I lacked self-control. Worse, I didn't even try to fight it. Mark knew exactly what he was doing. He saw how I lit up when he was near, and he used it. For me, it wasn't just lust, it was an escape. An intoxicating taste of freedom, untainted by arguments, responsibilities, or the crushing weight of married life. It was the stark contrast between the woman I had become, a wife, a mother, someone bound by duty, and the woman I once was. For the first time, I understood why Adam had insisted I take the kids. If they had been there, they would have grounded me, reminded me of my place, my purpose. But alone, I was free to forget. No one there knew me except my best friend and her husband, and their attention was consumed by wedding preparations. No one was watching. So, I let Mark play his dangerous games. He whispered sweet nothings into my ear, his voice a smooth melody that sent shivers down my spine. I giggled like a schoolgirl, intoxicated by the attention. By the end of the party, I had kissed him more than 3 times. I knew exactly where this was heading. When Mark invited me to his room, I didn't hesitate. That night we talked for hours. He draped me in compliments, telling me I was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Normally, flattery wouldn't sway me so easily, but that night was different. I was vulnerable, reckless. And Mark? He knew exactly how to take advantage. Even now, I can admit, Mark had a way with words, a charm that clouded my judgment like a thick fog. Looking back, I hate him for it. Because of him, I discovered a side of my husband I never knew existed. But that's a story for another time. One moment we were talking, the next we were kissing. Then I lost all sense of restraint. By the time dawn broke, I had done the unthinkable. I didn't just sleep with him, I indulged in the fantasy, letting it consume me completely. I shamelessly showered with him that morning, had breakfast in his room, and spent the entire day at his side. I was so enthralled by Mark that I even skipped my best friend's bridesmaid brunch. Nothing else mattered. I didn't want the wedding to end because I knew what awaited me beyond it. Reality, a husband, children, and the suffocating weight of guilt. But guilt wasn't enough to stop me. For the remainder of my trip, I lost myself in Mark. I abandoned my own hotel room, moving into his just to be closer. For a week, I played the role of a wife to a man I barely knew. On the last day, Mark made me a promise. He would visit me in my city whenever he could. He lived in the distant state, but he mentioned he was originally from my city and still had family here. The thought of seeing him again was tempting, dangerously so. But deep down, I knew the truth. This couldn't spill over into my real life. I couldn't afford it. I had to keep my affair buried, keep Mark away from the world I had built. If my husband ever found out, no, I refused to even entertain the possibility. I did everything in my power to ensure Mark and Adam never crossed paths. But karma had other plans. They did meet. And it ended in broken bones. The cracks widened. Before that night of reckoning, there were warning signs, a slow, creeping unraveling of my secrets. Adam didn't know about my betrayal at first, but he wasn't blind. The moment I returned, he watched me like a predator studying its prey. And the more I tried to act normal, the more suspicious he became. That was my mistake. People with the most to hide try the hardest to seem innocent. I overcompensated, smothering my guilt with forced normalcy, and in doing so, I gave Adam a reason to suspect me. It was the hardest thing I had ever done because, for the first time in our marriage, I had been unfaithful. In fact, it was the first time I had ever cheated in any relationship. I had always been loyal. And now, I could barely breathe in my own home. Simply being in the same room as Adam felt suffocating. Adam wasn't a man who could be manipulated or softened. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, his intuition razor-sharp. From the moment I left, he resented the way I did it, sneaking away before he even woke up, leaving our daughter behind despite his insistence that I take her. To him, it was a sign of disrespect. When I returned, the air between us was thick with tension. Adam confronted me immediately, demanding to know why I had left the way I did. I met his frustration with defensiveness. Admitting to disrespecting him, let alone in the worst possible way, was out of the question. But Adam wasn't convinced by my excuses. He saw through them, through me. He knew I was hiding something. Deep down, I knew he was right. But I also knew one thing for certain. I would rather chew glass than confess. So, I did what I had to do. I gaslit him. I played the role of the clueless wife, dismissed his suspicions, feigned indifference. Because telling the truth? That was never an option. Adam had made it clear long before we ever married. He had zero tolerance for infidelity. No second chances, no forgiveness. If he ever found out, he wouldn't just leave me, he would erase me. So I chose to act. I buried my affair beneath a facade of normalcy, returning to my routine as if nothing had happened. And slowly, the tension between us began to fade. Weeks passed, and it seemed as though we had finally returned to the way things were. I let myself believe I was safe. I let myself believe Mark was just a reckless mistake from my past. But peace is always the calm before the storm. The reckoning. For months later, Mark shattered my illusion with a single phone call. "I'm in your city." The words sent a jolt of panic through me. I never expected to see him again. Hearing his voice, knowing he was here, filled me with something I hadn't felt before, not longing, not excitement, dread. I knew Mark was trouble, and if I wasn't careful, he would destroy everything. And I was right. The moment he revealed he was in my city, the requests began. He was relentless, wearing me down with his persistence until, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. Deep down, I knew it was a terrible idea, but a part of me still wanted to see him. Despite everything. We met for lunch, and the instant he walked in, I knew I was in trouble. Throughout the meal, Mark couldn't keep his hands off me. Back in the distant state, I had been able to keep my composure. But here, where my husband lived, I was terrified. I had to be cautious. Every move carried a risk. Yet, I couldn't afford to show any signs of nervousness. If I did, Mark would sense something was off. That lunch was, without a doubt, the most tense and nerve-wracking meal of my life. My eyes constantly darted around the restaurant, scanning the room, making sure no familiar faces were watching. But Mark, as impatient as ever, didn't care that we were in public. He acted as if we had nothing to hide. After lunch, I rushed home, scrambling to prepare dinner for Adam and pick up the kids from school. No matter how quickly I moved, I still fell behind. When Adam walked through the door that evening, I wasn't even finished with dinner. The moment he stepped inside, his question caught me off guard. "Did you go out today?" I froze. How did he know? I hadn't mentioned leaving the house. Then his expression darkened, his voice sharp. "Why were the kids waiting at school for nearly an hour before you picked them up?" My stomach dropped. I had lost track of time while stopping for groceries. I knew the school would eventually call one of us, but I had assumed they would contact me first. When no call came, I thought I had gotten away with it. Thinking quickly, I came up with an excuse, blaming the delay on a long checkout line at the store. It was weak, but it seemed to pacify Adam for now. My biggest mistake was underestimating him. I thought the matter had ended, but Adam wasn't one to let things go so easily. While I tried to move past it, he kept digging, determined to find the truth. Meanwhile, Mark, ever the devil on my shoulder, invited me out again. This time for dinner. I refused at first, the risk was too great. But Mark, as always, wouldn't take no for an answer. Sneaking out at night was infinitely harder. I had to wait first for the kids to fall asleep, then for Adam to drift off. Fortunately, he usually went to bed early due to work, so slipping out unnoticed wasn't impossible. As soon as I was sure he was asleep, I left. Mark had booked a hotel. I made it clear I couldn't stay the night, but he pleaded for me to stay longer. Whenever I was with him, my common sense seemed to vanish, rational thought disappeared, and I made reckless decisions. That night was no exception. We had dinner, laughed, kissed right there in public. I let my guard down, falsely believing no one who knew me would be out that late. And since Adam was already asleep at home, I felt secure. Ignoring every warning in my head, I spent the night at the hotel. But the next morning, my world came crashing down. As I arrived home, my heart nearly stopped at the sight before me. Scattered outside were my belongings. Clothes, shoes, personal items, all dumped carelessly for the world to see. My breath caught in my throat, my pulse pounded violently in my ears. I forced myself inside, my legs shaking beneath me. The moment I stepped into the living room, an even greater shock awaited me. Seated before me were both Adam's parents and my own, their faces grim. Panic gripped me. Before I could find my voice, Adam pulled out his phone and pressed play. There, clear as day, was a video, me and Mark at the hotel restaurant, kissing. I was speechless. There was no excuse, no lie that could save me now. Then, like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion, our parents began discussing custody arrangements for the children, right in front of me. It was happening too fast, unraveling before I could even process it. And then my mother stood. Without warning, she grabbed me by the hair and dragged me out of the house. Their voices rang in my ears, disappointment, fury, shame. But I couldn't speak. I was still reeling from the shock of being caught. Adam had followed me that night. He had seen everything. And all my careful planning, my desperate attempts at secrecy, had been for nothing. The next day, I called Mark and told him everything, about my marriage, about how Adam had thrown me out. Mark's reaction was instant rage, not at my betrayal, but at Adam's response. He was furious that I hadn't told him I was married, but at the same time, he brushed it off. "It doesn't really matter," he said with a smirk. "After all, I'm in a relationship too." I asked Mark if I could stay with him in his city, but he refused. Instead, he insisted on confronting Adam and demanding answers. I knew immediately this was a terrible idea, but I never imagined just how catastrophic it would become. Mark was relentless, refusing to back down. Before I knew it, I found myself driving him to Adam's house, dreading what would unfold. When we arrived, Mark pounded on the door, his persistence forcing Adam to finally open it. The moment Adam saw me standing beside Mark, he understood everything. Mark, trying to assert dominance, raised his voice. "How dare you throw the mother of your children out like that?" His words made me cringe, even I knew how absurd the situation was. Unmoved, Adam attempted to shut the door, but Mark wedged his foot in and repeated, "I'm asking you a question." What happened next left me in complete shock. Without hesitation, Adam grabbed Mark's shoulder and drove his knee straight into his stomach. Before Mark could react, Adam seized his hands and landed a brutal punch to his face. The violence erupted so fast that if not for Mark's agonized cries and the sickening sounds of impact, I wouldn't have fully grasped what was happening. Adam didn't stop. Blow after blow, he overpowered Mark with sheer fury. Mark struggled, fighting back, but he was no match for Adam's wrath. I remained frozen until I saw blood gushing from Mark's knee. Panic surged through me, and I rushed between them, desperate to stop the carnage. Big mistake. Adam shoved me aside without a second thought, sending me sprawling to the ground. It was clear there was no reasoning with him. Desperate, I ran outside, searching for help. Eventually, a bystander intervened and pried Adam off Mark. By then, Mark was in such a terrible state he could barely stand. He groaned in agony, his face swollen and bruised beyond recognition. I had no choice but to call an ambulance. I could hardly believe it. I had just accompanied my affair partner to the hospital after my husband had beaten him to a pulp. And as bad as it was, Mark had it coming. But the humiliation didn't end there. Despite everything, Mark refused to take any responsibility. Instead, he blamed me for his injuries. Right in front of me, he blocked my number, told me never to contact him again, and accused me of setting him up. He even threatened to file charges against both Adam and me unless I covered his hospital bills. I didn't want more drama, so I paid every last cent. It drained my savings, leaving me utterly broke. And then, as if to add salt to the wound, Mark vanished. He ghosted me entirely, cutting off all contact. The price of betrayal. Do you remember when I said I was going to beg Adam for forgiveness? With my parents, that didn't go well either. Adam had already made up his mind. He filed for divorce, leaving no room for reconciliation. And then he did the unthinkable. He told my parents everything. He revealed how I had the audacity to bring my affair partner to our home, something I had deliberately kept from them. Their disappointment crushed me. The shame in their eyes was unbearable. They were so disgusted that they asked me to move out. Now I had nothing. No savings, no place to go, no one to turn to. And as if that wasn't enough, Adam was out for blood. He had left no stone unturned in the custody battle, determined to prove I was unfit to raise our children. He presented damning evidence, claims that I had neglected them, abandoned them at school to go on dates, even left them for an entire week just to attend a wedding. With the kind of top-tier lawyers he hired, I knew I didn't stand a chance. And I was right. I lost. The court ruled in Adam's favor, granting him full custody of our children. I stood there, frozen, as the judge's words sank in. Not only did I lose my kids, but I was also ordered to pay child support, money I didn't even have. Worse, my visitation was restricted to supervised meetings. I had gone from being their mother, the woman who once tucked them in at night, to nothing more than a visitor, someone who needed permission just to see them. Desperate, I turned to my parents for support, but they wanted nothing to do with me. My mother couldn't even look at me when she said, "You made your bed, now lie in it." In a moment of sheer despair, I reached out to Adam. I begged, pleaded, sobbed, anything for a chance to see our children more often. But he shut me out completely. He didn't yell. He didn't gloat. He just looked at me with cold detachment, as if I were a stranger. Then, without a word, he closed the door in my face. 7 months have passed. Adam has moved on. He's dating someone new now. I saw them together once, laughing, happy, looking like a perfect little family with my children. And all I could do was watch from the sidelines, swallowed whole by regret. This is my reality now, a life of quiet shame, of watching the man I betrayed build a future without me, while I struggle just to survive. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.